And start recording. So again, welcome. My name is Jen Ozawa. I use she, her pronouns, and I serve in the role of Procurement and Policy Manager at KCRHA. Thank you all for making time to join today's information session. We'll be going over the non-congregate shelter request for proposal details and answering any questions that folks might have today. We also have a couple other colleagues from KCRHA joining us as well today, so thank you for making time to join the session. Feel free to add anything I may have missed that you might be aware of, and we'll go ahead and get started. So for our time over the next hour or so, we will go over the scope of work for this particular RFP, the funding details, application details, timeline, and then create some space for folks who might have some questions about this particular funding opportunity. So this funding opportunity, like all of ours at KCRHA, are guided by KCRHA's theory of change, which says that if we create a homelessness response system that centers people with lived experience of homelessness, then we will be able to focus on responding to needs and eliminating inequities in order to end homelessness for all. So we are seeking partners. One second, my computer's about ready to die. Seeking partners who also, kind of align and believe in KCRHA's theory of change to carry out the work in which KCRHA believes is needed for system transformation in our region. That said, getting a little more granular in this particular scope of work, the purpose and the intent of this particular RFP is to preserve life and health and prevent the spread of COVID-19 and other communicable diseases. Again, this is a non-congregate shelter model, so kind of divesting from the congregate model that I think our communities used to prior to COVID. Additionally, we aim to help people experiencing unsheltered homelessness in the city of Seattle to quickly find safe alternatives to street and encampments through an investment in non-congregate shelter dwellings. And that also focuses on rapid exit to permanent housing from the emergency non-congregate shelters. While also promoting system transformation to rapidly exit individuals and couples from non-congregate shelters to permanent housing. So you might be able to tell from here, we are seeking proposals that would work with individuals and potentially couples as well. Within this request for proposal, there are 3 different program areas. One area is site development, which includes purchase entities that currently purchase, own, or has access to property that meets the City of Seattle siting requirements. And you'll notice in the RFP guidelines that there's a hyperlink that defines what the siting requirements are. If you're not familiar with those, you could click on that within the guidelines and get more details. Also, feel free to reach out to us and let us know if you have any questions about that. The site development proposer would need to maintain site control for a minimum of 10 years from the date of final payment to be used for the same purposes of what you're proposing in your RFP. So mainly what we are trying to get at is that there is a longer term investment. We wouldn't want to partner with a proposer that only has a limited ability to maintain the site, given the services and people needing to potentially plan on having the non-congregate shelters be in place for a significant amount of time. Yeah, Eddie.
Just out of curiosity, so does that mean that as long as performance standards were met, that there would be a guarantee of 10 years of funding?
Great question. No, not necessarily, because we can't necessarily forecast what funding will look like within 10 years. But we do need a commitment from anybody proposing to use a site that they would have access to it for at least 10 years. We do anticipate that funding would continue for this request for proposal ongoing, which we'll get to that, some of the funding nuances here in a minute, assuming that that funding is able to be maintained through the city budget, as well as whatever partners are awarded continue to perform. Does that help answer your question?
Yes, it does.
Okay, cool. And we'll get to a funding slide too that kind of breaks down some of that as well. So let me know if you have any other questions. And then aside from, just sort of needing to maintain the site for 10 years, we're also looking for folks who have experience developing property and specifically setting up non-congregate shelter options. And we are open. KCRHA is open as far as our definition of what non-congregate looks like. So that could be modulars, pods, pallets, tiny house dwellings. Really just looking for proposals that create a safe and humane space for folks to transition into a more permanent community, permanent housing. The two other areas available through this RFP are on-site operations. So this is essentially an applicant that would be interested in providing 24/7 professional staffing, sort of property management functions of the community, including de-escalation, training, and staff that are sort of taking a de-escalation approach versus a kind of calling the police right away and starting, trying to go for 911 type of interventions immediately, but really focusing on trying to integrate transformational ways of ensuring safety for communities. Also looking for on-site triage and collaboration with the housing support services staff. That's the next category within this RFP, on-site housing support services, which also include licensed behavioral health support. So this may look like providing substance use disorder, mental health assessments, and counseling through licensed professionals, at least at a master's level, conducting intervention and de-escalation supports to ensure safety of the community, and equally as important, providing housing-focused case management to support and ensure transition to permanent housing from non-congregate communities. One couple points I just want to add to this. The applicants that are able to provide all three sort of program areas, whether it be in-house or through partnerships that you will be proposing through the RFP, will be scored most highly. So if you're able to kind of package all of this in one, that's going to be within sort of the criteria and the way in which raters are going to be evaluating the proposals, going to be most highly desired. We want to try to get these funds and this non-congregate community kind of up and running as soon as possible. And based on lessons learned from previous non-congregate shelter RFPs, that's what we have seen is sort of the most efficient and easy, kind of straightforward way to go about setting this up. So we are completely open to individuals or organizations who have expertise in maybe one or a couple of the areas applying for the area of expertise, but again, proposers that are able to kind of propose the full package of services we're looking for will be most desired. So here is that funding slide, Eddie. As you'll see, there's some one-time funding. All of these funds are from the City of Seattle. HSD stands for Human Services Department General Fund. So these are Seattle-centric funds. That's why it's Seattle-based. This year, we have a one-time add of $870,000. That will be one time only. So please think about that when kind of constructing your budgets of things that will be only needed in sort of the ramp-up period for 2023. So probably not going to want to have your salaries and things like that aligned to that fund source in particular. Also below that, ongoing funds. So this is the amount that we anticipate moving forward until either the expiration of this funding type, meaning when we reprocure it at a later date, or if funds are no longer offered through the city budget. But right now we can guarantee that there's going to be $760,000 for the remaining 2023 year, for a total of $1,630,000 in 2023, and then a total of $1,520,000 ongoing starting 2024 and moving forward. Any questions about the budget now that we kind of see it? There's a lot of flexibility in this RFP. We're not putting any floors or ceilings on the budget requests. So again, we're looking for, the most responsible budgets, best sort of stewards of all of the funds, while also being able to achieve the scope of work in a way that provides dignity and humanity within, the space, the non-congregate spaces that will be developed. All right, so as far as the application, again, applicants can apply for one or more, all three categories. Again, applicants proposing to offer all three categories will receive additional points, and that's highly desired. The full applicant pool, so any applicants we receive will be reviewed by our rating team composed of community members, subject matter experts, and individuals with lived expertise. They'll be reading and rating the applications and put forth recommendations for KCRHA to consider and move forward with awards. We are anticipating the awards and sort of program implementation beginning mid-July of this year. We'll be sure to let folks know if there are any delays in that, but that's the anticipated sort of start date. Flux is our grants management system. That system should be open and ready for submissions or for starting to work on your proposals as of yesterday. Feel free to email me. I'll give you my email here at the end if you have any issues with the Flux system. And then, excuse me, the application due date for this RFP is Tuesday, June 27th by 11:59 Pacific Standard Time. Just a couple more details on Flux. So again, Flux is the grants management system, excuse me, that KCRHA uses. I think folks on the call are probably familiar with it, but if you're new to it, you will need to set up an account. There is a hyperlink within the guidelines and application for this RFP that will route you to set up an account. It's fairly straightforward, but you will need to do that prior to being able to submit your proposal. It's also highly recommended. I'll be honest, we've had quite a few bugs as we've been kind of setting up the Flux system. And highly recommend starting your application early to just make sure you're familiar with how the platform works. Also highly recommended that you retain a copy, so just copy and paste your proposal answers in a separate document, like a Word document, in the event that there's some type of Flux glitch and it's requiring you to start over. We would hate for you to have to start completely from scratch. So it's highly recommended you kind of save your work on another platform in the case that there's any kind of bugs. So here is our timeline. The funding opportunity was released on Wednesday, May 24th. We're here today at the information session. Thanks for making time again. If you have any questions that linger, or for folks who are maybe reviewing the recording, we are accepting questions through June 26th at 5 p.m. We post Q&A on our website at kcrha.org. Under the resources funding opportunities tab, there's kind of an ongoing Q&A drop down that you can see for this particular RFP. We try to do a 24-hour turnaround. So when we receive a question from a potential proposer, we try to respond within 24 hours and post those publicly on our website. So again, Flux should be open as of yesterday to receive applications. The application deadline via Flux is Tuesday, June 27th, before midnight, our time. We do anticipate holding virtual tours and interviews, and we'll be asking applicants to state their sort of time preferences when they submit their proposals. It will be various kind of folks from the rating panel who will be staffing those interviews, and it's an opportunity for folks to kind of see, meet people and potentially see the various different non-congregate sites if that's available, or kind of be able to have a conversation around the vision of the non-congregate shelters being proposed. We anticipate making awards and or denials by Wednesday, July 19th. Appeals are due Wednesday, July 26th. There's a 5 business day window to appeal any decisions. And then again, the estimated contract start date is around mid-July or so. And that is all I have for today. There's a lot more information within the guidelines around sort of the menu of different activities that can be provided in all 3 kind of program areas that we are seeking. So I encourage you to take a look at those as well. Any questions though while we are together? Yep, Betty, go ahead.
Hey, so I know the at least the language in the RFP does say that additional points would be awarded for like South Lake Union area or SODO. But can this be used to expand an existing site, or does this have to be a new program?
Yes, it can be used. As mentioned in the guidelines, we're trying to find at least 50 additional new tiny homes. So if you have a site that's existing, that's completely fine. It would just need to be an additional 50 units that would be added to that site.
Okay.
Or a combination. So if you have, maybe there's only room for 10 at your existing site, but maybe you have a partnering organization who is also interested in this and they could provide, 40 or something like that, then that could be another option to kind of.
Are besides single adult, are there any population restrictions?
No population restrictions, just aside from like 18 and up.
So, but it would have to be 18 up. Like it couldn't be like what about like a 50 and up site, a senior site?
That there wouldn't be any restrictions for that necessarily, no.
But could it be though?
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's all I have. Kate's also here from CCS. I don't know if she had any.
Yeah.
No, thanks, Eddie.
Great, thanks. Hi, Elaine.
Hi there. I'm so sorry. I just joined because I had the I had the outdated info, like the Google meeting, and I've been like sitting in there for 20 minutes. So I'm so sorry that I'm late. Is there a way that I can take a look at the slide deck so that I don't have you just like rehash all of that? And I guess I just wanted to confirm, so is this RFP explicitly for tiny homes, or are you open to other non-congregate models like a hotel shelter, like a hotel-based model or something like that?
Yes, first, apologies for the change of Google to Zoom. KCRHA just went through like a transition from Google to Microsoft, so apologies for that. And we have been recording, Elaine, since the beginning, so I will be sure to get the recording to you. It will also be posted for anybody who might be interested or anybody who might have been sitting in the Google Meet. I'm so sorry. It will be posted for future viewing. I'll get it up today so you can take a look at those other slides. And yes, our definition of non-congregate is open. It's not just tiny homes. We have explicitly kind of been intentional around reimagining sort of what non-congregate can look like. So yes, those are all options. Hotels, pods, creative uses of space to create non-congregate emergency shelter. Yes, absolutely. Make sure that everybody gets access to the whole recording for today. And again, apologies for that change. Any other questions?
I wanted to ask one more clarifying question about the amount available. So it said that there would be 1.5 million in 2024. So is that I guess like, is that just for 2024, or is that, is it going to be an annual renewal like for 2025, like ongoing? Is this going to be ongoing funding?
Yes, great question. It is anticipated to be ongoing. So this year, there, as it's kind of outlaid in this slide, there is one-time money, so an additional 870,000 basically for 2023. What I explained to folks prior was just be very mindful and intentional about how you're going to potentially allocate those one-time funds. So probably not to your personnel or something like that, but to some of your startup costs that won't be ongoing after 2024. And then the ongoing amount that we anticipate at this point, unless funding levels change on the city budget process, is 1.5 million. So 1,520,000. 2024 and beyond, until either KCRHA rebids or reprocures this contract, in several years from now, or if the city budget levels change, which we don't know yet, but ongoing is what we anticipate.
Great. I'm sorry, I have one more follow-up, and that amount is for all, like that amount is, that's the total in the pot for all 3 areas of the RFP, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yep, great questions. And then the other thing that I had mentioned for folks who are maybe just now joining is that we highly encourage partnerships or organizations who are kind of able to do all 3 areas. It is an option to apply for one or more, but again, there's more points that will be offered for proposals that can kind of offer all the full sort of menu of things that we're looking to fund here. And the reason for that is kind of lessons learned from our previous non-congregate shelter RFP. It was just a lot more sort of streamlined and efficient, the proposals that were funded last round, when all 3 kind of components were in place versus trying to coordinate those things. So that will be again awarded additional points for proposals that are able to do that. So we are absolutely encouraging partnerships if that's something that would be needed to accomplish that. Amy, I think I saw your hand up.
Yeah, thanks. Apologies, we were late as well. But quick question about land access. The RFP mentions a 10-year requirement for land availability. Is it possible to leverage properties that are available for 3 to 5 years if there's a plan for relocation of residents that need to be moved, or like sites that are awaiting permanent housing development, but will probably get permits in the next 3 to 5 years? Is that acceptable?
I will have to double check on that and provide an update in our Q&A online.
I can submit a formal written question to that effect if that's better too, but there's actually a lot of land available for shorter periods of time, like a lot more of it. And it like for us, for Pallet, we can move our stuff really easily. And so if we can create a plan by which we can move stuff around, would that be an acceptable use?
Yeah, I will have to triple check just with our fund, source restrictions. I totally hear you and see that could be a big asset for our community, that, having some flexibility around that as long as a plan's in place. The intentionality behind that I explained before is really around, not wanting to invest in a bunch of non-congregate shelters that are going to get, evicted or moved, lease will expire and displace folks who are relying on emergency shelter at the
Sure.
site.
That makes sense. Yeah, that totally makes sense. But like for us, for example, the investment remains even if you move it, right? So our modules are movable. So you're not investing in something that you're losing value in, you just move it to a different site. And we do this all over California and all over the country. But, and then my other hope is that the intention is not for us to put people in these and leave them there for 10 years. The intention is to work with them, right? To get them moved on to permanent housing. So ultimately, eventually we want to see these sites no longer used, right? I mean, that's the goal. And 10 years is a long time. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you lifted that too. That's a component that was reviewed on the other program area, which is around, housing support services and behavioral health, and the emphasis of providing housing focused case management to ensure transition to permanent housing. So yeah, if you could email that question, that would be fabulous. I'll be sure to get a response within the next 24 hours or so. It really is a kind of restriction, potential restriction with City of Seattle General Fund, but I think we can make a case. So I'll keep you all posted.
Okay, awesome. And then on the permitting side, did you specify the kind of permits that you expect or that City of Seattle expects to see for these? Sorry, I missed that.
Yeah, no problem. So you'll see in the guidelines, I'm going back to the site development kind of program area. In the guidelines of the RFP, there's City of Seattle siting requirements. It'll be hyperlinked in there if you're not familiar with them. And then that will give you all the nuances of permitting and things like that, requirements that will be needed.
Perfect. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome. Great questions. Any other questions before we conclude today's information session? Again, I'm so sorry for the confusion around where to join today's information session. We're just transitioning out of Google and into Microsoft, so you will be using Zoom and Teams and things like that moving forward. If there are no other questions, then I encourage you
Sorry,
to.
Jen.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I did have a question, and I'm so sorry that I am late. So you might have covered this already, but I was wondering if there were if there were any expectations around like the referral process of like how people get in, or if there were any thoughts about like eligibility, like client eligibility for these types of units.
Great questions. So referral type will be through coordinated entry, and it's sort of new process. As far as eligibility, pretty open. It is city general fund versus like federal funding. So we're just looking for anybody who is proposing to work with single adults and or couples. And it's 18 and up. There was also a question previously around working with 55 and up communities, and there are no restrictions for that.
And then are there any guidelines or expectations around length of stay?
Nope, there are no guidelines set forth. So that would be determined by whatever you're proposing.
But it sounds like the preference is for exit into permanent housing, and so like it sounds like it's the preference is to not have like strict time limits.
Correct.
Right?
Yes. Okay. Yep. And the ultimate goal, right, is that these are emergency shelter, communities with the intent of moving individuals to a more permanent housing solutions like rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, market rate housing, those types of options, and anything else in between.
Thank you.
I'm sure folks may have other questions that may come to mind, either in this space or if viewing this recording after the fact. If so, you can reach myself and my team at rfp@kcrha.org. We aim to get back to folks within 24 hours, and especially for any questions related to the RFP. So again, just as a reminder, recognizing that some folks came in late, the last day to submit questions is June 6th, so next Tuesday by 5 p.m. And then we will be sure again to just post the ongoing Q&A on our website under the resources tab, under funding opportunities, and then the Q&A drop down box is where you'll find ongoing answers. Any final questions before we jump off today? Okay, fabulous. Again, yeah, Elaine.
So sorry, Jen. I'm being so obnoxious. But I saw in the application questions and rating criteria that one of the rating criteria for staffing was for applicants to have a plan to build leadership capacity and opportunities for their BIPOC staff. I'm wondering if well, first of all, I love that you guys included that in your RFP because that's so important, and I'm so glad that like this type of equity continues to be a priority for KCRHA. And then I guess I would love to, I was just wondering if KCRHA had like any sort of resource guide or of like examples of like ways that organizations can build like authentic, you know, meaningful, like build leadership capacity in like an authentic, meaningful way. Yeah, I guess you have thoughts around that or.
Thank you, Elaine. That's a great question. The procurement team doesn't necessarily have anything explicit. I do have several colleagues on the phone right now, or on this this meeting right now. And sorry to put you all on the spot, but Miriam, curious if you might have any additional things to add, or anyone else from KCRHA to speak to Elaine's point.
Hey, Jen, no worries. Hi, everybody. Miriam Kasaika, I use she, her pronouns, and I have the pleasure of working at the Regional Homelessness Authority alongside Jen and a few of my colleagues who are here on the call. And I also know we have our Director of Equity and Justice, Ms. Erin Bryant Thomas, who's also on the line. They might also have something to contribute to this conversation, but I think one of the things that we definitely want to keep in mind, you know, it's in our theory of change, it's in our mission. We're really keen on advancing leadership for people of color within organizations, and not just on the program side, but on the leadership side. So what we would probably want to see is how you are effectively and intentionally, we don't want to say including, right? Inclusion is very much so othering. How are folks participating and embedded within your programming, right? From your staff to the people who are making decisions on behalf of or alongside people with lived experience. Erin, I don't know if you have anything to chime in. Jen, would you be willing to just rephrase the question again?
Yeah,
Sure.
okay, go ahead, Elaine. Go ahead. And
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was wondering if you guys could describe or give examples of, you know, what it means to build BIPOC leadership capacity in you know, a genuine, authentic, meaningful way that's, you know, not tokenizing to your point earlier.
Yeah, if I may chime in, thank you, Elaine, for that very important and critical question. And I think that, you know, that's something that we have been trying to really be in practice around, and also make more space for our providers and partners to be in practice with as well. You know, we've had, you know, deep conversation internally about what it looks like to share power. What does it genuinely look like and feel like for folks to see themselves as critical partners, thought partners, decision makers in this process. And one of the things that I will say is it's important for us to, one, recognize when we say we want people with lived experience of homelessness, when we say we want Black and Indigenous, Latinx, API folks to be a part of the decision making. We need to understand foundationally root cause to why folks have not been a part of these conversations, right? And then we also need to understand what comes with, disempowered, disrespected, and dismissed populations of folks, right? And so when you talk about leadership development, it's critical that you support Black and Brown folks, people with lived experience around gaining a sense of their own power. And how you do that is through education, you do that through training, you do that through practice. And how you disrupt tokenism is you continue to open up spaces, right? Allow folks to come into spaces to just be their full, authentic selves, right? And I know what I've observed and seen traditionally happen is, there's cherry picking that happens. There's folks who there's a lot of terms that I've heard use, things like, oh, they are great participants. They're really articulate. Just so many toxic characteristics of folks who are deemed as service utilizers who could, I guess they could pluck to say that they've included diverse voices, right? And so I think we just want to be super mindful of how we bring people in, supporting people through education, through training, and through just practice, conversations. Allow them to sit in space when you're talking about the development of your plans, when you're talking about, we're interested in applying for funding for non-congregate shelter, and doing that in plain talk, I think is something that we also want to make sure we incorporate, and making sure that people understand what it is that we're saying when we're talking about an RFP, request for proposal. How much money, talk about the money. Really read through the proposal in its entirety. Take the time. I think that's the biggest thing that I would also encourage is build in the time to develop people whom you are wanting to bring in to be a part of this process, because you want people to be able to make sound decisions without the influence of the people who hold the power, right? But really making space for their voices. And so I really appreciate, your question, and if there is any support that we can offer by way of facilitation or helping to hold space as you embark on that journey. And then if there are some ways that you all have done that well, bringing folks in to be a part of your process that we can learn from, we'd also love to hear from you in that regard. But thank you so much for your question. I hope that was a helpful response.
Thank you so much, Erin, for just your thoughtful, comprehensive response. I really appreciated it. I think for me, speaking as an individual, I really love seeing that on your RFPs when I do, because it's just such a great opportunity for KCRHA to really encourage other organizations to build the leadership of their BIPOC staff and like other marginalized community members in their organization. I think that's just so. Yeah, I just think that's like a really, really incredible and like brilliant opportunity for, I think, KCRHA to really like push forth like the racial equity politics. And yeah, I just really want to say I appreciate it. I think something that would be helpful, I think in the future is maybe like having what you said, Erin, like having it like sort of written down and like somewhere for organization leaders to reference, and so it's just something that like organization leaders can like almost like a like something like 1 or 2 pages. I mean, not even that short, or however long you want to make it. Just something to for organization leaders to really be able to use as a tool when we are, thinking about and like creating and structuring our programs. I'm thinking of almost like the city's like racial equity toolkit or something. I think that would be really cool. If that's something that's like within your the purview of your organization. Thank you.
Miriam?
Thank you, Jen, and thank you, Erin, for that really thoughtful response. I also wanted to add, when KCRHA was initially piloting the new RFP template, one of the things that came up quite frequently is partnering with other organizations. And I know, Jen, you mentioned that, but also getting to know your community, right? You don't have to be the person doing all aspects of programming. I see Pastor Willie Seals here, Sister Carolyn Riley Payne. They are community members who have a long storied history within the Central District and Beacon Hill, Black pastor, Black community. So also recognizing that you don't have to do it all, right? You can partner with people who have expertise in certain aspects of your programming. And that is another way of building leadership and building capacity within the BIPOC community in Seattle as well.
Awesome. Thank you, Elaine, for that really important question and just lifting that. Thank you so much, Miriam and Erin, for your additional information and analysis. We will absolutely, and thank you, Elaine, for the suggestion too on sort of building out what that means. And I think that could be a really important accountability sort of measure too. For organizations who have been, awarded funds because of that, being explicit in how they plan to promote and pour into their BIPOC staff. So we will, kind of think about what we might be able to do. Another piece that I just, as far as, offering some kind of toolkit or additional resource. Another piece that I wanted to add to that is within Miriam's point around partnerships. So some of the conversations that are had amongst staff and then rating panels is around looking at the budgets too. So if you're saying you're investing and partnerships that allow for your organization to be more culturally responsive and to partner with BIPOC-led orgs, those partnerships should be equitable. They should be reflected, equity should be reflected in how much, organizations are maybe subcontracting with and the amounts that are being subcontracted for. Those types of things are aspects of analysis that the rating panels will take when looking at the various different parts of the guidelines and the rating criteria. There is also criteria within the application. So if you're not totally sure sort of what a question is asking or kind of getting at, the criteria should help applicants be able to kind of hone in on what the rating panel will be using as a way to guide their ratings and their scores. So that is another way to kind of assess if your proposal and if this partnership between KCRHA as a funder and your organization would be a good fit or not as well. Any other last questions? Thank you all for this conversation. Yeah, Willie.
Good morning, everyone. I got on a little late. Can you guys hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, I got on a little late. Thank you, Marion, for highlighting what Christ Spirit is trying to do in terms of partnership. I was wondering, I haven't got a chance to read the RFP, but is the RFP inclusive of new providers that wants to partner with KCRH in terms of from the ground floor starting out? We could be a great model. I heard the young lady was asking question in reference to not only the inclusive, but the relationship with the new providers. So is there anything in the FRP that would be beneficial for a new organization that wants to open up their facility in terms of shelters?
Great question. So yes, we encourage any applicant who meets KCRHA minimum eligibility requirements, which are listed on our website, to apply. There are 3 different categories. Applicants can apply for one or all of the categories. We encourage partnerships. So let's say, Willie, let's say, for example, your organization has access to a site, right? Like has a site that could be offered for the development of non-congregate shelters. Maybe your expertise at this point isn't quite the housing support services and operations, but you can either apply to offer a site, and then there would be potential services that through other RFPs or through other proposals could potentially use the site, or what would be more highly encouraged, just based off of how sort of the criteria is set up for this RFP, is to start to talk to potential partners to fill in some of those gaps. So if operations isn't your thing, or the housing support services isn't your thing, or you don't have a site quite ready, but you have the other 2 components, then we encourage folks to start talking and start planning potential partnerships for the application, so that's like sort of a whole model being proposed. So yes, it's completely open to new organizations, nonprofits, faith-based organizations, also for-profits for the site development side of things, or nonprofits as well for that area. Did I answer your question?
Sure, thank you.
Yeah, of course. We have about 10 minutes, so if any other questions come to mind. All right. Well, thank you again for your time, your interest in this non-congregate shelter request for proposal. We look forward to engaging in any other questions you have up until next week, and look forward to also hopefully receiving your proposals in the next few weeks. Thank you again. Thanks also for the thoughtful conversation. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you. And again, this recording will be posted online at kcrha.org under funding opportunities. Apologies for the misunderstanding on the correct meeting invite.
All good. I'm glad I was able to get in and we were able to have this very thoughtful conversation. And I love your idea about using any sort of like racial equity toolkit you guys develop as an accountability measure, because that's so important.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I hope that's something you guys do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Have a
thank
great
you
day.
for the thought and the suggestion, Elaine. Appreciate it as always.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Take care.